Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. In 1990, in a quiet suburb of Los Angeles, Maverick Winslow radically changed his life to avoid the police and the dark forces of his past. After the gang he was a key member of was dismantled in the late 1980s, Maverick knew that a life of crime was no longer a viable path for him. With multiple warrants for his arrest from multiple states, he was forced to disappear. Maverick forged papers, changed his appearance, and took on a new name to live in seclusion as a regular auto mechanic. Maverick chose a less traveled suburb where no one asked many questions and curiosity rarely went beyond casual conversation. Using his experience as a criminal, he quickly opened a small but fully equipped auto repair shop. Under the new name, Maverick's shop became a trusted stop for locals, from long-haul truckers to families in the area. Maverick skillfully hides his dark past, presenting himself as a diligent and quiet mechanic, always ready to help customers with a bland but friendly smile. Maverick maintains a regular and somewhat solitary life. He does not make many friends, only focuses on his work and avoids complicated social relationships. Caution is always present in Maverick's every action, from the way he follows strange customers to the way he always changes his route when going out to avoid being followed. Maverick knows that even the slightest mistake can land him in the hands of the police or old enemies in the criminal world who never forgive betrayal. Maverick's repair shop is located on a quiet street, with a simple and unremarkable sign. Inside, Maverick decorates the shop with basic items, repair tools, a few vintage car posters, and an old radio that plays classic rock. Maverick is always present from dawn to dusk, busy with cars and manual labor, but his eyes are always on the move around him. Despite his reclusive lifestyle, Maverick never allowed himself to relax completely, always carrying a small gun hidden in a drawer under the counter, ready for any unexpected situation. Occasionally, the past would loom large in the form of suspicious-looking customers or late-night knocks on the door. Maverick was always on high alert for strangers who appeared in the store, especially those with tattoos and cold eyes. Whenever someone asked too much about his life, Maverick would deftly change the subject or answer with elaborate stories. He never let anyone get too close to his personal life, keeping the veil of mystery perfectly concealed. Maverick Winslow first met Rebecca Collins on a spring afternoon in 1988 at a small coffee shop near his neighborhood. There was nothing special about the place. A few old wooden tables, pastel walls, and soft lighting from the hanging lamps. Maverick came to this cafe every weekend to relax, away from the stress and hidden fears of his criminal past. That day, as Maverick sipped his black coffee, he noticed a strange woman sitting in the corner. She had soft brown hair, thoughtful eyes, and a gentle smile. Rebecca Collins, or rather Rebecca Adams, was not the ordinary woman she seemed. She was an undercover police officer assigned to track down Maverick Winslow, a former key member of a notorious smuggling ring that the police had dismantled a few years ago. Although Maverick's organization had been dismantled, he was still an important link with valuable information that the police needed to complete the case. Rebecca's mission was to approach Maverick, collect evidence of his criminal activities and those involved. She had studied Maverick thoroughly, his personality, his interests, and his habits. Rebecca knew what to do to approach him, and most importantly, she knew that Maverick never trusted anyone easily. Rebecca took the initiative to approach Maverick by accidentally dropping the book she was reading on the table. Maverick, who was not usually interested in people around him, was suddenly attracted by her naturalness and gentleness. He picked up the book and gave it back to Rebecca. It was a book about travel, a hobby that both of them seemed to share. They started chatting, at first just simple questions about the weather, about their hobbies, but gradually Maverick felt comfortable with Rebecca's presence. She was not too loud or ostentatious. On the contrary, her gentleness and sophistication attracted Maverick. Rebecca presented herself as an independent woman, living a peaceful life with a boring office job and occasionally stopping by a coffee shop to find some relaxation. Every conversation was skillfully led by Rebecca. She listened more than spoke, and each question was asked at the right time. She never asked too deeply about Maverick's past, understanding that he was a cautious and reserved person. That was what made Maverick begin to open up more to Rebecca. For the first time in many years, he felt like someone understood him without having to say too much. Meetings at coffee shops became their routine, and soon, the two started dating. Over the following months, Maverick and Rebecca became closer. Rebecca spends a lot of time building a relationship with Maverick, from walks in the park to dinners at small restaurants near where he lives. She constantly shows kindness and sincerity, but at the same time she always keeps a certain distance so as not to arouse Maverick's suspicion. Rebecca understands that Maverick is a man with many worries and doubts, and she has to gradually break down the walls he has built to protect himself. Maverick, who is used to living alone and not trusting anyone, begins to feel that his life is more meaningful with Rebecca by his side. She becomes a spiritual support, someone with whom he can share thoughts that he cannot tell anyone else. Rebecca skillfully leads Maverick into emotional conversations about his dreams and what he wants for the future, things that even Maverick himself has never thought of. He fell in love with Rebecca not only because of her beauty but also because of the deep understanding he felt from her. Rebecca made Maverick feel loved and accepted, something he had never experienced since he entered the path of crime. After a year of dating, Maverick decided to propose to Rebecca. For him, Rebecca was not only a companion but also a new hope in his troubled life. Maverick planned the proposal meticulously, a romantic evening on the beach, just the two of them and the gentle sound of the waves. Rebecca, although knowing this was an important moment for her to take the next step in her mission, could not help but hesitate. During her time with Maverick, she saw his vulnerable side, and somehow she sensed that Maverick was not the evil man his profile portrayed him to be. Still, Rebecca held firm to her purpose. She smiled and nodded in agreement as Maverick knelt before her, placing the ring on her finger with hopeful eyes. Maverick and Rebecca were married in the summer of 1989, in a small ceremony with only a few of Rebecca's closest friends and colleagues, all of whom were agents acting as guests. Maverick did not invite anyone from his past, because he knew that his old life had no place in Rebecca's future. The wedding was held at a beachside restaurant, where the sunset reflected on champagne glasses and happy smiles on both their faces. For Maverick, this was not just a wedding but the beginning of a new life, a life he hoped would be peaceful with the woman he loved. However, for Rebecca, this wedding has a different meaning. It is an important step for her to collect enough evidence and finish the mission. Throughout her time with Maverick, she silently recorded important details about relationships, conversations, and secrets that Maverick accidentally or intentionally revealed. Rebecca's notes grew larger and larger, but at the same time she began to find it more difficult to distinguish between duty and personal feelings. Maverick, completely unaware of Rebecca's true nature, grew to trust and love her more. He opened up more about his difficult years, about his mistakes and regrets. Maverick no longer kept too many secrets from Rebecca, believing that she was the only person who accepted him for who he was. He told her about his painful memories, about his near-death experiences during internal gang purges, and about the decisions that would forever leave him unable to return to being a normal person. Rebecca listened to it all, both as a companion and a secret agent. Each story Maverick tells brings her closer to completing her mission, but at the same time it also drags her into a complicated emotional spiral. Rebecca succeeds in approaching and building trust with Maverick, but at the same time she begins to find herself caught between the mission and her true feelings. After getting married, Maverick and Rebecca lived a peaceful life in a small house in the suburbs. Rebecca played the role of the perfect wife, diligently cooking delicious meals, cleaning the house, and always listening to Maverick's stories. Every morning Rebecca prepared coffee for both of them, then enjoyed breakfast with Maverick on the balcony, where they could watch the morning sunlight shining through the trees. Maverick gradually felt that he had truly escaped his criminal past and found peace with Rebecca. "This steak you made is so delicious," Maverick complimented, nibbling on the steak Rebecca had just made. "It's just a simple recipe," Rebecca smiled back, her eyes gentle but still shining with a hidden coldness. Maverick often told Rebecca about his work at the auto repair shop, and she was always his biggest supporter. "I think we should expand the shop a little," Get more customers and more cars, Maverick excitedly shared. I believe you can do it, Rebecca replied softly, her eyes fixed on Maverick, all the while considering the important details she needed to collect for the mission. While Maverick was content with his current life, Rebecca continued to silently record all the valuable information. She stored important pieces of Maverick's past, seemingly small details that would be evidence to help the police convict him. Feelings of guilt sometimes flashed through Rebecca's heart, but she knew her mission was not over, and the day Maverick would have to pay for his sins was getting closer than ever. As time passed, Maverick began to notice unusual things about Rebecca. At first, they were just brief phone calls, often when he was away or busy in the store. Rebecca always ended the call quickly and avoided his questions about the content. Maverick thought she was probably talking to friends or family, but as her late-night outings became more frequent, he began to worry. Rebecca would often make excuses like meeting old friends or needing some alone time to relax, but Maverick sensed something was wrong. One night, Maverick decided to follow Rebecca as she excused herself to go shopping. He followed silently, keeping a safe distance so as not to be detected. Rebecca drove to a secluded area, a place Maverick never thought she would go. When Rebecca stopped in front of an old warehouse, Maverick felt his heart pounding. He held his breath and watched from a distance, trying to take in every little detail. After a few minutes, a man stepped out of the shadows and approached Rebecca. Maverick was stunned when he realized it was a police officer he had met in the past, when he was in the gang. Rebecca spoke to the man, and Maverick could sense from their gestures that this was no casual encounter. Rebecca silently handed the man a file. The two exchanged a few quick words and then parted without a hug or a goodbye. Maverick retreated into the shadows, trying not to make himself known as Rebecca got back into her car and drove away. In Maverick's mind, the pieces of the truth began to come together. Maverick remembers all the times Rebecca acted strangely, the secret calls, the nights out for no apparent reason, and the seemingly unintentional questions that touched on his past. Maverick is shocked to realize that Rebecca is not the gentle wife he thought she was. It was all just a perfect play staged to trap him. Rebecca is a spy, a police officer planted to collect evidence, waiting for the right moment to arrest him. The pain and betrayal suffocate Maverick. He blames himself for trusting Rebecca too much, loving her too much, to the point of being blind to the obvious warning signs. Every sweet word, every caring gesture from Rebecca now seems fake and bitter. Maverick doesn't know how to face this truth, and even less what to do next, so he quietly returns home. Maverick sits in the dark room, his mind spinning with jumbled thoughts. Anger and pain from betrayal surge like a raging storm inside him. When Rebecca entered the house, all emotions seemed to be pushed to the extreme. Maverick could not bear it any longer. He decided to confront the truth he had just discovered. Maverick cornered Rebecca, questioning her about what he had seen, about the mysterious encounters and her true identity. Rebecca could no longer hide, and finally admitted that she was a police spy, planted in Maverick's life to collect evidence. Rebecca tried to explain that she truly loved Maverick, that the mission was over, and that she just wanted to be with him. Maverick, however, could not believe it. Rebecca's words were like knives stabbing at his heart, reminding him that everything he believed in was a lie. The pent-up emotions erupted like a raging fire. Maverick felt as if the world was collapsing beneath him, and he could not control the rage that was surging. In his fury, Maverick could not contain himself. He attacked Rebecca, pouncing on her like a cornered animal. The fight was fierce, with both of them struggling in the cramped space of the kitchen. Rebecca tried to fight back, but Maverick, with the hysteria of a betrayed man, did not stop attacking. On a whim, Maverick grabbed a nearby kitchen knife. With a shaking but uncontrollable hand, he stabbed Rebecca. Rebecca fell to the floor, her eyes wide with fear and pain. Maverick stood there, gasping, unable to believe what he had just done. He stared at his wife's lifeless body, blood spilling out, forming a crimson pool on the floor. In that moment, Maverick felt like his world was falling apart. He had killed the person he loved, even in a fit of rage and despair. Panic quickly overtook Maverick. He knew that there was not much time left before the police would find out what had happened. Maverick had to act quickly. He immediately cleaned up the scene, wiping away the blood with a towel, trying to erase all traces. The bloody knife was thrown into the sink. Cold water poured down, washing away the evidence of the crime. However, Maverick knew that the traces could never disappear completely, and he could not run away forever. After wiping away the blood from the floor, Maverick began to gather the necessary personal belongings. He tried to stay calm so as not to miss anything, but his hands were still shaking uncontrollably. Maverick knew that he had to leave America, where all roads led to punishment. Plans to escape quickly formed in his mind. Maverick searched for old relationships, people who could help him hide temporarily before finding a way to escape abroad. Maverick went to the secret safe in his bedroom, where he kept enough cash to cover his escape. He stuffed the money into a backpack along with some clothes and personal items. For a moment, Maverick felt like he was back on the path of the outlaw, a path he had tried to leave behind but was now forced to return to. Maverick walked out of the house, not looking back. The Los Angeles night was dark. Only the faint glow of streetlights illuminated his path. Maverick drove away from the area, keeping a steady speed so as not to attract attention. He drove to an old motel on the outskirts of the city, where he could rest for a while before trying to find a way to leave the country. Maverick's escape plans were beginning to take shape. He knew he had to change his appearance, find a way to get close to the traffickers to get fake papers and cross the border. When the police discovered Rebecca's body in a small house in the suburbs, they quickly arrived at the scene. The murder, with traces of a violent struggle, shocked the entire investigation force. Rebecca, a secret agent planted in the life of a notorious criminal, was now dead in the very house where she had tried to maintain her perfect cover. The police immediately sealed off the area, collected evidence, and conducted an autopsy. Rebecca's fatal wounds, obvious signs of violence, and Maverick's absence quickly made him the prime suspect in the case. Police began digging into Rebecca's life, and it didn't take long for them to discover her secret files, which documented her long-term assignment with Maverick. These documents not only proved that Rebecca was a spy, but also provided details about Maverick's true identity, a notorious criminal who had eluded justice for years. Clues from Rebecca's files led police to several pieces of evidence, including secret communications with superiors, reports of Maverick's activities, and even sensitive information about the criminal network Maverick had been involved in. These discoveries made the police more urgent in their pursuit of Maverick. A manhunt was launched immediately, involving multiple agencies, from local police to the FBI. Maverick's image was quickly circulated in the media, along with warnings that he was dangerous and possibly armed. Security was tightened at Los Angeles' airports and land ports to prevent Maverick from escaping. Meanwhile, Maverick was on the run, stressed and desperate. He tried to approach a human trafficking ring to buy fake papers and arrange a route out of the country. With the cash he brought, Maverick planned to buy a plane ticket to South America, where he hoped to hide for a long time before finding a way to settle down. But Maverick did not expect the police to track him down so quickly. Every port was under close surveillance, and Maverick's time was running out. Finally, at the Los Angeles airport, Maverick tried to stay calm as he passed through security, but the fear of being discovered was always present. He stood in line to board the plane, sweating as he tried to keep his appearance casual. But the tension in Maverick's every move did not escape the security guards, who recognized him from the description on the wanted poster. When Maverick's name was called for identification, he knew it was all over. Police swarmed from multiple directions, surrounding Maverick at the boarding gate. He tried to resist in a desperate moment, but a large number of security guards and police quickly subdued him. Maverick was arrested in the chaos of the airport, where stunned passengers watched as a man was handcuffed and led away without a chance to explain. All escape plans had collapsed, and Maverick knew there was no way to escape his dark past. After arresting Maverick, the police immediately began interrogation. Under pressure from the questions, Maverick had no choice but to admit the truth about Rebecca's death. The evidence from the scene, along with Maverick's confession, paints a clear picture of the case. Rebecca is not only his wife, but also a spy planted to collect evidence of Maverick's past crimes. And in a moment of betrayal, Maverick kills her. The truth about Maverick and Rebecca's lives is gradually revealed to the public. The media covers this dramatic murder case extensively, painting a story of a notorious criminal exposed by the woman he loves the most. Rebecca's double life, hidden conspiracies, and conflicted love affair between two people on opposite sides of the law become hot topics in the newspapers. Maverick faces trial with a series of charges. Not only is he charged with murder, he also faces a slew of charges related to his past criminal activities, including weapons and drug trafficking. The trial becomes the focus of public attention, where Maverick finally pays for everything he has done. The image of a man who once lived a reclusive life trying to redeem himself is replaced by the image of a killer, trapped by his love. The police have completed the final mission that Rebecca could not complete. Maverick is sentenced to a heavy sentence, and he knows that his days of freedom are over forever. In his final moments before being escorted from the courthouse, Maverick cannot stop thinking about Rebecca, who loved him but also pushed him to the brink of destruction. Maverick's life is no longer about escape plans or dreams of redemption. It was all that remained of the cold prison walls and the haunting memories of a love betrayed and destroyed. The case ended with Maverick's harsh sentence, but its echoes still left a haunting impression on those who witnessed it. Story 2. Now we return to a case in Washington, D.C. in 2000. After discovering her husband's infidelity, the wife planned a cruel revenge on her husband, deciding to prolong his pain both physically and mentally. Alaric Vesper, 29, is a man who lives a fairly quiet life in a small town outside of Washington, D.C. His main job is working in the construction industry, a not-so-prestigious profession that gives him stability. Alaric is known as a calm, quiet man who always works hard. He has no ambition to rise in society. Instead, he appreciates the simple values in life. In 1998, Alaric's life changed when he met Eloane Voss, a 26-year-old woman with an ordinary appearance but a sharp mind and special sensitivity. Eloane is not the type of woman who is easy to impress at first sight, but those who have the opportunity to interact with her for a long time quickly realize the sophistication in her thoughts. Although Eloane was not exceptionally beautiful, she stood out for her profound perspective and her sensitivity to the little things in life. That was what attracted Alaric from the first time they met. Their meeting happened naturally and without any staging or arrangement. They met at a small coffee shop in town, where Eloane often stopped by in the morning before starting work. Alaric happened to frequent the same place, even if it was just to have a quick cup of coffee before going to the construction site. One morning, while both of them were waiting for their drinks, they had a short conversation. It was just a simple exchange of words about the weather or daily work, but something in Eloane's eyes and the way she spoke made Alaric unable to stop thinking about her after that conversation. From then on, the two of them started talking more. At first, they just ran into each other by chance, but gradually they started taking the initiative to meet at coffee shops or walk around town in the late afternoons. Alaric was not a man accustomed to dating or conquering women, but with Eloane he felt everything happen naturally. They talked about seemingly small things but deeply connected their interests in books, their experiences in life, and even their simple dreams. Eloane, with her sensitivity, realized that Alaric was a quiet but sincere man. She was attracted to his rustic personality, and gradually she felt comfortable sharing the most intimate things about herself. Alaric also gradually realized that Eloane was not only an intelligent woman but also had a kind and sympathetic heart. This made him feel more attached to her. They discovered a special harmony between two people who seemed different but were in tune with each other emotionally. After only a short time of getting to know each other, Alaric knew that Eloane was the one he wanted to share his life with. For Alaric, life was not about distant dreams or adventurous adventures. What he needed was stability, a reliable companion, and a small family. Eloane, with her understanding and sensitivity, was the perfect woman to fill the void in his life. The two quickly decided to get married, not because of outside pressure or family wishes, but simply because they felt this was the right time. Alaric proposed to Eloane on a peaceful afternoon in the small garden behind his house. There were no roses or romantic candles, just the sincerity in Alaric's words and eyes. And for Alone, that was enough. She didn't need any ostentatious ceremonies, just knowing that their feelings were genuine and lasting. After proposing, they quickly held a small wedding ceremony, with only close friends and family present. Neither of them wanted a big wedding, because for them the most important thing was the bond between the two. They spent more time preparing for their future life than worrying about the lavish details of the wedding. After getting married, Alaric and Alone's life seemed very peaceful. They moved to a small house in the suburbs of Washington, a peaceful and convenient place to build a home. The house that Alaric renovated himself was his pride, with a small garden in the back and cozy rooms. Alone, with sensitivity and sophistication, spent a lot of time turning the house into a truly comfortable space, where they could enjoy peaceful moments together. At first both were satisfied with their married life. In the quiet mornings Alaric would go to work early, leaving Alone to do the housework and her own little pleasures, from reading to tending the garden. In the evenings they would often have dinner together and chat about each other's workdays. Although life did not have many big events, the stability and peace made Alone feel secure. She believed that she had found a reliable partner and a companion on all future journeys. However, after a while Alone began to notice changes in Alaric. He no longer came home on time like before. The evenings, which were usually family time, became less frequent. Alaric began to make excuses about work to be away from home, even saying that he had to work overtime on weekends, something that had never happened before. Alone had no doubts at first, because she had always trusted Alaric, and he had never given her a reason to lose trust. But as time went on, Alaric's changes became more obvious. He became more distant, less talkative, and even avoided the deep conversations they used to share. Whenever Alone asked about his absences or his changes in demeanor, Alaric would only give vague answers or blame his busy work schedule. Gradually, Alone sensed that something was wrong. Her sensitive instincts told her that what Alaric was saying was not entirely true. Alone began to pay more attention to Alaric's actions. She discovered that he often received calls that she was not allowed to answer, and that there were messages that came late at night that Alaric had to secretly check. Her suspicions grew, and finally Alone decided to find out the truth for herself. One evening, when Alaric said he was going to work overtime, Alone secretly followed him. She saw him drive not to the construction site, as he said, but to another area further away, closer to the city center. After waiting for a while, she saw Alaric get out of the car and walk towards a fancy restaurant. Not long after, a young, attractive woman walked out of the restaurant and approached Alaric. They exchanged intimate gestures, leaving Alone with no doubt. That woman was Zephra, a name Alone had never heard Alaric mention before. Alone was shocked. She could not believe that the husband she once trusted was betraying her. After that night, she decided to find out more about Zephra. Through investigation, Alone discovered that Zephra was Alaric's new co-worker at the construction site. Although she tried to maintain her composure, the truths she found out made Alone feel deeply betrayed. Alaric had not only lied to her, but had also established a long-term relationship with Zephra, something she never thought would happen in her marriage. When she discovered Alaric's betrayal of her to Zephra, Alone was filled with not only grief but also burning anger. Her heart, once devoted to Alaric, was now filled with hatred and revenge. However, instead of confronting him immediately, Alone chose to secretly plan. She understood that a direct confrontation would not bring her the satisfaction she needed. Her goal was to cause Alaric extreme pain, both physically and mentally. Alone began to closely observe Alaric's habits. She knew his schedule, the places he frequented, and how he lived his daily life. She silently accumulated information that she could use in her plan. Alone didn't just want to kill Alaric quickly. She wanted him to feel deceived and betrayed, to feel like he had lost everything just like she had. Step by step, Alone began to create situations that made Alaric doubt their relationship. The first step in Alone's revenge plan was to attack Alaric's psychology, and she had a meticulous plan. Knowing that Alaric was always careful about his finances and valued stability, Alone began by quietly changing the passwords to his bank accounts. Without warning, she began to interrupt the monthly payments that Alaric expected. At first, Alaric didn't pay much attention when the money wasn't transferred to his account on time, thinking that there was a problem with the bank. However, after a few weeks, he began to feel worried when the payments were rejected and his financial situation became chaotic. Alaric tried to contact the bank, but each time he encountered unexpected difficulties. It was as if everything was set up to leave him in a state of utter confusion. He couldn't understand why, despite his steady job, his paycheck wasn't coming into his account. The stress was getting to Alaric's head, and he was starting to worry about his financial future. Meanwhile, Alone continued to mess with his psyche with more subtle tricks. She sent anonymous, threatening messages to Alaric's phone, implying that he was being followed and would pay for his actions. Alaric couldn't figure out where the messages were coming from, but they became more frequent, with words that made him feel threatened and followed everywhere. Every time his phone rang, he felt scared, not knowing what to expect next. The life Alaric once knew was now chaotic, full of uncertainty, and he began to doubt everything around him. As Alaric's psyche collapsed, Alone decided to move directly to his body. She began to inject small doses of poison into Alaric's food and drink that would not cause immediate death but were enough to undermine his health. At first Alaric only felt mild fatigue, thinking it was due to the stress of work and the financial problems he was facing. But as time went on, he began to feel exhausted for no apparent reason. The fatigue continued to increase, to the point where he no longer had the energy to maintain his daily activities. Day by day, Alaric's body became weaker and weaker, and all attempts to find an explanation fell through. Doctors could not find any cause for his condition, leaving him even more confused. This condition not only affected Alaric's physical health but also caused him to collapse mentally. With each passing day, his body became more and more exhausted, but there was no way to understand what was happening. While Alaric struggled with his physical weakness, Alone continued to increase the pressure by playing with his mind. She quietly changed the position of the objects in the house, causing Alaric to gradually lose the feeling of familiarity with his living space. Important personal items mysteriously disappear or are placed in strange positions, making him feel like he is losing control. Not only that, family photos are torn or strangely turned upside down, making Alaric feel as if someone is sneaking up on him from behind. Strange sounds begin to ring in the middle of the night, causing Alaric to wake up in a panic. Alone installs devices that emit strange sounds, creating the feeling that someone is sneaking into the house in the middle of the night. Alaric's mind gradually becomes chaotic, and he cannot distinguish between reality and hallucination. The feeling that he is being watched increases, and he begins to doubt his own sanity. Alone, standing behind, only smiles coldly as she watches her husband fall into a spiral of confusion and despair. When Alaric was in a state of mental and physical collapse, Alone realized that the time had come to enter the final stage of her plan. One night, when Alaric was too weak to resist, she tied him to a chair in the living room. Alone no longer needed to hide her hatred and desire for revenge. She faced Alaric, looking straight into his eyes, but there was no mercy. To her, this was no longer the man she had loved, but an enemy who deserved the pain he had caused her. Alone had prepared carefully for this stage. The torture instruments she had collected over the years were now put to use. Each wound Alone inflicted was calculated to prolong Alaric's suffering, but not to kill him immediately. She used precise blows to the weak points of his body, making him unable to endure but not enough to end his life. Each blow, each cut had a single purpose: to prolong the torture and make Alaric suffer the most excruciating pain. Alaric screamed in pain, but nothing could save him from this nightmare. Alone continued to torture him, step by step, with a cold and unfeeling gaze. There was no forgiveness or mercy for Alaric. His last days were just a long series of physical and mental pain. He felt like he was falling into an abyss, with no way out. Finally, when Alaric had no more strength to resist and life was only a faint glimmer, Alone prepared for the final step. She mixed a powerful potion into Alaric's drink, slowly killing him. Alaric's final torment was the realization that the very wife he had trusted and loved had meticulously planned to destroy him. In his final moments, Alaric realized that all the pain he had endured was not just physical, but also a betrayal and the collapse of everything he had believed in. Alone stood there, silently watching as the life left Alaric's body, leaving behind a cold void of cruel revenge. Alaric's death, at first, did not arouse suspicion. When the police arrived on the scene, there was no sign that he had been attacked or had been in a violent struggle. Everything had happened quietly, and his body bore no visible external injuries. With his frail body and failing health seemingly lasting for weeks, local police and medical staff both believed it was a case of natural death, a slow death without a struggle or resistance. However, Ilone did not expect that the autopsy would expose the elaborate plan she had carried out. According to regulations, sudden deaths are usually required to have an autopsy to determine the exact cause. When Alaric's body was transferred to the forensic room, the doctors began to carefully conduct an autopsy. Initially, the results were not too unusual. However, when examining the internal organs and analyzing the blood, traces of poison gradually emerged. The poison Ilone used was not the type that could cause immediate death, but it had accumulated in Alaric's body over time. This substance gradually destroyed the internal organs, causing general weakness and making the body unable to resist. The presence of poison in Alaric's blood immediately alerted the forensic doctors. They knew that this was not a natural death as initially predicted, but the result of a sophisticated poisoning process. Suspicions grew as doctors continued to closely examine Alaric's body. Although there were initially no obvious signs of violence, small wounds and bruises on his skin were discovered when examined under bright light. These injuries were not enough to cause immediate death, but they suggested that Alaric had endured a prolonged period of torture. Small cuts and bruises in hidden places on his body seemed to indicate deliberate torture. With these findings, an official investigation was launched. Initially, the police had few clues, but they knew that Alaric's death was no coincidence. The traces of poison and violence hidden beneath his skin led them to believe that someone else must be behind his death. Their attention quickly turned to Ilone, Alaric's wife who had been by his side during his failing health. Ilone initially appeared calm and cool, feigning grief over her husband's death. She believed that by covering up all traces of violence, the police would never suspect her. However, the investigation gradually exposed the secrets she had tried so hard to hide. Police began looking into her recent purchases and shopping history. They discovered receipts for the various poisons that forensics had detected in Alaric's system. This led them to suspect that Ilone may have been carefully planning to slowly poison her husband. The police did not stop there, but they found other evidence when they thoroughly searched Ilone and Alaric's home. During the search, they discovered several torture devices hidden in a basement storage room. Although they had been cleaned, the tools still had small traces of recent use. These tools matched the mysterious injuries that the forensics had found on Alaric's body. Investigators continued to compare each clue and gradually formed a clearer picture of what had happened. They knew that Ilone had not only poisoned her husband, but had also physically and mentally abused him for a long time before his death. She had tried to cover up her cruel actions by creating a natural death scene, but the evidence was too obvious to ignore. Another important piece of evidence the police discovered were electronic records from Ilone's computer. During their investigation, they found online searches related to purchasing undetectable poisons as well as how to use torture devices that do not cause immediate serious harm. These searches were indisputable evidence that Ilone had intended to kill her husband for a long time and had spent a great deal of time planning the details of the act. Faced with such undeniable evidence, Ilone refused to cooperate with the initial interrogations. She tried to remain calm, but her cold and unrepentant demeanor only made the police more suspicious. When asked about the receipts and tools the police found, she made up all sorts of excuses, but none of them were convincing. Her vague, illogical answers only made the police more convinced that she had something to do with Alaric's death. Eventually, Ilone could no longer maintain her composure under the mounting pressure from the police and the mounting evidence. When confronted with such undeniable evidence, her anxiety began to show. The feeling that everything was falling apart around her made her lose control. During a lengthy interrogation, When pressed beyond her ability to escape, Eloan partially confessed to poisoning Alaric, but she still tried to justify that it was not a deliberate crime, but the result of long-standing suffering and resentment. Eloan's half-hearted confession did not save her situation. The evidence was so clear and conclusive that it did not take long for the police to conclude that she was the main culprit in Alaric's death. Her ruthless actions and lies made it impossible for her to escape the law. Eloan Voss was arrested and brought to trial in early 2002. At trial, the irrefutable evidence, along with her cold confession, led the court to sentence her to life in prison. Eloan admitted that she had planned from the beginning not only to kill Alaric but also to make him suffer for a long time before he died as revenge for his betrayal. The trial ended with Eloan being sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Story 3. In this story, we will take you back to a fateful evening in 2010, when a young man full of hope and love did not expect that his own family would become his worst nightmare. Ian, a brilliant medical student with a bright future ahead of him, lives in the pride of his family. But behind that perfection lies an unimaginable story of betrayal from his own father, Mr. Anvid. What happened that turned the beautiful love story between Ian and his girlfriend Kiera into a horrible nightmare? Why did a father, who was supposed to be a symbol of protection and love, cause such a terrible tragedy? We will uncover every detail of this heartbreaking story, a case that not only shook the city of Jaipur, but also sent shivers down the spine of India. Join us as we explore every nook and cranny of this case, from first love to tragic death, and finally a face-to-face with justice. Ian was born and raised in Jaipur, Rajasthan, in a middle-class Indian family. As the eldest son in the family, Ian was always carefully educated from a young age and was expected by his parents to become the pride of the family. His father, Anvid, was a successful local businessman, while his mother, Meera, was a traditional housewife who devoted herself to the family. Although they were not exceptionally wealthy, they lived comfortably. Ian is an intelligent and ambitious young man. From a young age, he excelled in his studies and always cherished the dream of becoming a doctor to help people. With hard work and determination, Ian got into the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, one of the most prestigious medical colleges in India. This was not only a source of pride for Ian but also for his entire family. As a calm, kind, and warm-hearted person, Ian quickly became popular with his friends and teachers. During his time at AIMS, he met Kiera, a beautiful and intelligent girl who was also studying medicine. Kiera, a 20-year-old girl, was born and raised in Delhi, India. She is the youngest child in a middle-class family with a tradition of education. Kiera's parents both work in education, with her mother being a high school teacher and her father a university lecturer. From a young age, Kiera was encouraged to study hard and develop into a talented, independent woman. Not only did she stand out for her beautiful appearance, she was also an excellent student throughout her high school years. After graduating, Kiera entered the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, one of the most prestigious schools in India, to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor. With passion and hard work, Kiera quickly integrated into college life, where she not only did well in her studies, but also participated in many extracurricular activities. Kiera is an intelligent, independent girl, yet still retains a gentle and affectionate side. Her sociability and openness endear her to everyone around her. During her time at AIMS, she met Ian, a boy in her class. Ian and Kiera, from the moment they met at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, became close friends. Both shared a passion for medicine and shared common interests, which helped them connect and understand each other easily. Gradually, their feelings developed into a deep love from their first year of college. Their relationship is not only based on love, but also on understanding and supporting each other in study and life. Ian and Kiera are the perfect couple in the eyes of friends and acquaintances because they always have respect and sincerity for each other. The two often appear together, sharing joys, sorrows, and dreams for the future, making everyone around them admire. Ian and Kiera's love affair, with its sincerity and empathy, is a highlight of their lives throughout their college years. On June 9, 2010, Ian decided to bring his girlfriend Kiera to his home in Jaipur for a big family party. This was a special event not only because it was the first time Kiera met Ian's family, but also because it was an opportunity for Ian to officially introduce his beloved girl to his closest relatives. He is eager to show his family that Kiera is not only a beauty but also a potential life partner. As Kiera entered the Ian family's large home, she immediately drew attention with her elegant appearance, gentle beauty, and refined manners. She wore a traditional sari, lightly decorated but still exuded elegance. The constant smiles and compliments from relatives and family friends made Kiera feel more comfortable in the unfamiliar atmosphere. However, amidst the cheers and happy conversations, there was one gaze that never left Kiera's face, that of Mr. Unvit, Ian's father. A middle-aged man, Mr. Unvit was the head of the family, always stern and authoritative. From the moment he first laid eyes on Kiera, an unhealthy feeling arose in his heart. The young girl's beauty and innocence aroused a dangerous desire in him. Throughout the party, Mr. Unvit's eyes were always on Kiera, but no one noticed it, not even Ian. He kept finding excuses to get close to her, from asking her about her studies to giving subtle compliments about her looks and intelligence. Kiera sensed something was wrong with his approach, but she tried to remain polite and not show her discomfort. While everyone in the family was busy chatting and congratulating each other, Ian did not notice anything unusual about his father. When the party ended, the whole family was overjoyed with Kiera's arrival, and Ian was relieved that everything had gone smoothly. But what no one expected was the terrible things that were silently happening in the mind of Mr. Unvit, who left his eyes unable to hide his sick desire towards the girl his son loved. That night, after the party, Kiera was arranged to sleep with Savi, Ian's younger sister, in a small bedroom. They chatted happily for a while before falling asleep. But at midnight, a terrible event happened. Mr. Unvit sneaked into the room with evil intentions. Around midnight, Mr. Unvit, Ian's father, quietly opened the door to the girl's room. With his usual stern face but a sickly look in his eyes, he entered the room. Kiera was still in a deep sleep, unaware of the approaching danger. Mr. Unvit rudely asked his daughter Savi to leave the room, telling her to go out in an arrogant tone. Savi, surprised and a little scared but too used to his father's authority, quickly got up and left the room without daring to ask why. When Kiera and Mr. Unvit were alone in the room, she was still unconscious, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Mr. Unvit slowly approached the bed, his eyes shining with the sick and suppressed desire of the party. He bent down next to Kiera, gently embracing her. In a moment of reverie, Kiera woke up with a start and realized something was wrong. She felt Mr. Unvit hugging her, and immediately felt panic. Kiera tried to struggle free, but before she could react, Mr. Unvit used his strength to restrain her. He pushed her onto the bed and covered her mouth with his hand, whispering vicious threats into her ear. "You dare scream? Let everyone in the house hear." Mr. Unvit emphasized each word in a threatening, challenging tone. Kiera panicked, but she didn't dare scream, afraid that things would get worse if someone found out. In extreme fear, Kiera could not resist Mr. Unvit's power. He committed a depraved act on her, taking away Kiera's first time, right in her lover's family's house. That night became a terrible nightmare for Kiera. She lost her innocence, her safety, and her faith in love in just one night. Kiera, in her helplessness and humiliation, did not dare to speak up or resist for fear of the consequences. Mr. Unvit, after committing his heinous act, left the room as if nothing had happened, leaving Kiera in extreme pain and fear. The house returned to silence, but Kiera's soul was forever scarred by a dark night she could never forget. The next morning, Kiera woke up with a heavy heart and indescribable pain. She felt like her whole world had collapsed after that terrible night, but Kiera decided not to show it. With fear and humiliation suppressed in her heart, she tried to act normal. Kiera couldn't let Ian or anyone else in his family know about what had happened. She knew that if the truth came out, the consequences could be dire, not only for her but for Ian and his family. Kiera remained cheerful and amiable as she sat down to breakfast with everyone. She exchanged pleasantries with Ian's mother and even chatted with Mr. Unvit as if nothing had happened. Mr. Unvit also appeared normal, showing no signs of anxiety or remorse. He behaved like a model father, leaving no one to suspect anything of the cruel act he had committed the night before. Ian's sister Savi, who had been asked to leave her room by Mr. Unvit that night, also appeared completely normal. She asked no further questions and did not show any signs of confusion or concern. Savi continued her daily activities as usual, seemingly unaware of the terrifying events that had occurred in her room the night before. Savi and Kiera's silence allowed everything to proceed smoothly, without anyone noticing anything unusual. After breakfast, Ian and Kiera prepare to head back to college. Ian happily bids farewell to his family, while Kiera tries to keep her emotions inside and keep things as normal as possible. About 2 weeks after returning to school, Ian and Kiera continue their academic lives, but it seems an invisible distance has begun to form between them. Although Kiera tries to maintain a normal appearance, inside she is still filled with pain and trauma from that horrible night at Ian's house. She doesn't know how to face Ian when he is unaware of the horrible truth she has been through. One fateful evening, Ian and Kiera decided to spend some time together in Kiera's rented room. They both felt that this was the right time to take the next step in their relationship, to share their first time together. Ian always believed that Kiera was the girl he loved, and that she would remain pure until they were both ready. However, that night revealed a truth that he could not have expected. As they got closer, Ian realized that Kiera was no longer a virgin. This shocked and angered him to the core. He immediately stopped, pushed Kiera away, and questioned her in anger. Ian could not understand why Kiera was no longer a virgin as she had said before. He loudly cursed Kiera, calling her a liar, that she had lied and betrayed his trust. Ian screamed in anger, disappointment filling his heart. Kiera sat silently, tears rolling down her cheeks. She knew this was the moment she could no longer hide it. In desperation, Kiera burst into tears and told Ian the whole truth. She told of the terrible night at his house, when Mr. Unvit, Ian's own father, had sneaked into her room and raped her. She told of how he had threatened and dared her to shout, but she had not dared to fight back. Kiera tries to explain that her silence was not because she wanted to hide it from Ian, but because she was too scared and didn't know how to face the truth. Ian was stunned after hearing Kiera's story, unable to believe what he had just heard. He felt torn between his love for Kiera and the horror of his own father's depravity. Instead of continuing to be angry, Ian hugged Kiera, feeling the pain she was going through. He apologized to her for losing his temper and not believing her in the first place. Ian promised Kiera that he would not let this go. The next morning, Ian could no longer bear the anger and resentment. He immediately decided to leave Delhi, took a leave from school, and took a bus back to his home in Jaipur. Ian was filled with dissatisfaction and pain. The father he had respected, the one who had always been a symbol of protection and love, was the one who had caused his girlfriend the most pain. When Ian returned home, he entered a house that had once been filled with peace, but had now become a place of betrayal and crime. Inside, his family was gathered, including his parents, some close relatives, and a few neighbors. Ian ignored the curious looks. He walked straight to the middle of the house and without hesitation reported what he knew. In the presence of everyone, Ian openly spoke about the horrific incident that Kiera had to endure. He narrated the whole incident at his father. Mr. Anvid raped his girlfriend at home that night. The discovery he just made not only caused Kiera pain but also made him fall into despair when the person who committed that depraved act was his own father. The confrontation threw Ian's family into chaos. Humiliation and shame enveloped Anvid. No matter how hard he tried to deny or cover up, the suspicious eyes of those around him pushed him into a situation where he could not deny it. The atmosphere was so heavy that no one dared to speak, leaving only extreme tension between father and son. All the respect and affection Ian had for his father had completely collapsed. After the confrontation, Ian returns to school, hurt and determined to find justice for Kiera. He knows that this is not just a personal tragedy but also a battle between love and crime, between honor and betrayal. Returning to the city, Ian carries with him sadness, disappointment, and the will to protect the girl he loves from the brutality of his own family. On July 12, 2010, Kiera suddenly disappeared, leaving her friends and family worried and confused. Kiera did not appear in class as usual, and all attempts to contact her were in vain. Her mysterious disappearance quickly spread throughout the campus and caused a wave of anxiety among the student community. No one could have imagined that a young, talented, and friendly student like Kiera could disappear without a trace. After hours of searching and informing the police, Kiera's body was discovered near the university in a deserted vacant lot. The discovery shocked the entire area, especially the entire student body of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, where she was studying. Police quickly sealed off the scene and launched an investigation, but what they discovered next was even more horrifying. According to the autopsy results, Kiera had been sexually abused before being murdered. Her body bore many signs of torture and violence. Most heartbreakingly, the victim had a broken neck, leading to her death shortly after. This brutal murder not only shocked the student community but also created terror for people in the surrounding area. Kiera's tragic death has sent the investigation into a new spiral. The police are not only searching for the killer, but also facing the anger and fear of those involved. Who committed this barbaric act against an innocent young girl? Who is behind this brutal murder that people cannot imagine? Through a thorough investigation, police collected evidence from the scene and Kiera's body. One of the most important clues was the fingerprints found on the victim's body. After a thorough examination, the forensic results revealed a shocking truth. The fingerprints on Kiera matched those of Ion's father, Unvit. This result caused a great shock, not only to the police but also to the entire surrounding community. The police quickly arrested Mr. Unvit on charges of being the perpetrator behind this barbaric murder. At the police station, after being arrested, Mr. Unvit initially tried to deny all the crimes, but faced with irrefutable evidence, he was forced to confess the whole thing. In his testimony, he admitted that after being exposed by his son and humiliated in front of his family and neighbors, he felt extremely humiliated and angry. His anger grew and he took out all his hatred on Kiera, who revealed the terrible incident to Ion. Unable to accept his reputation being ruined, Mr. Unvit decided to plot revenge against Kiera. He left Jaipur and went all the way to Delhi, where his son was studying, to keep an eye on the young girl. He patiently followed Kiera for many days, looking for an opportunity to strike. On July 12, 2010, when Kiera had just finished her studies and was on her way back to her room, Mr. Unvit saw the moment to act. While Kiera was walking down a deserted street, he abducted her. Mr. Unvit prepared a sleeping pill, gagged Kiera, and rendered her unconscious. He then took Kiera to an empty lot away from the residential area. There, he continued his depraved acts, abusing her again as he had done on the night of the party at Ion's house. However, this time Mr. Unvit decided to go further. After satisfying his sick desire, he left no chance for Kiera to survive and reveal the truth once more. With cold and cruelty, he broke Kiera's neck, brutally ending her life. After killing his victim, he left Kiera's body in an empty lot and left as if nothing had happened. Mr. Unvit's testimony revealed the entire cruel and barbaric plan he had carried out for revenge, and this action shocked the entire community. From a respected family man, he turned into a ruthless murderer, causing endless pain to everyone involved, especially Ion, his own son. The Delhi court, where the shocking case was heard, officially delivered its verdict after days of investigation and debate. Under the close watch of the media and public, the trial became tense as all the evidence was presented clearly. The judges found that Mr. Unvit's actions went beyond mere abuse and included detailed planning to kidnap, torture, and brutally murder his victims. He took advantage of his power and family connections to commit the crime, making the case particularly serious and causing inconsolable pain to Kiera's family and especially Ion, his own son, faced with irrefutable evidence. The Delhi court found Mr. Unvit guilty of sexual abuse and murder and sentenced him to death. The court stressed that his actions were cruel and inhumane and needed to be dealt with severely to uphold justice and build confidence in the legal system. The trial ended with the death sentence for Mr. Unwit, closing a barbaric case that shocked the entire city of Delhi and the whole country of India. The local people and the student community were shocked and indignant at the crime of a father who should have protected his son and family but turned into a cold-blooded killer. Story 4. In the early days of 2022, in the middle of a wealthy and peaceful town in Wilmington, Delaware, a story of pain and deception gradually unfolds. Jet, a successful entrepreneur in the cryptocurrency industry, who once enjoyed happy moments with his wife, Serafina, and their 2 children, has been hiding a dark secret. When virtual currency takes him from middle class to millionaire status, sin also creeps into his perfect family life. An affair with a beautiful maid from a poor countryside not only breaks trust, but also ignites an unforeseen tragedy. In April 2022, when the maid announces that she is pregnant with Jet's child, the child he never wanted. From here, a series of horrifying events begin, leading to a desperate kidnapping and culminating in a crime that shakes the whole city. But what drove Freya, an innocent young girl, to the path of crime? Join us in this case to discover the truth behind the splendid walls of the wealthy mansion, where dark secrets are gradually revealed. Jet was born in 1988 into a middle-class family in the suburbs of Wilmington, Delaware. He was educated in a comfortable and well-off environment since childhood, but not in a wealthy family. As a teenager, Jet stood out in school with his intelligence and ability to grasp technology quickly. He was especially interested in fields related to finance and information technology. While his peers were absorbed in entertainment activities, Jet was passionate about researching the stock market, cryptocurrencies, and their potential for development. While in college, he began investing in cryptocurrencies, a field that was very new at that time. After graduating from college with a degree in finance in 2010, Jet spent a few years working at a small investment firm to gain more experience. During this time, he began to accumulate assets from investing in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. By 2017, when the cryptocurrency market began to boom, Jet had made significant profits and quickly became an influential figure in the cryptocurrency community. With the wealth that came from investing, Jet began to expand his relationships and gradually transformed himself from an ambitious young man to a successful businessman. He decided to quit his job to focus on managing his assets and developing his own career. In early 2018, amidst his brilliant career success, Jet met Serafina, who would later become his wife, through a social media platform. Serafina was born in 1994 in a small town in Pennsylvania. She grew up in a normal family. Her parents worked hard to raise her and her younger brother. Since childhood, Serafina has been known as an intelligent, hardworking, and ambitious girl. With an active personality and sharp thinking, she always finds a way to overcome all challenges to achieve her goals in life. After graduating from high school, Serafina decided to pursue a career in the automotive industry, an area she loved very much. She started working at a large car dealership as a saleswoman. Thanks to her excellent communication skills and dedication to her work, Serafina quickly rose through the ranks and became one of the top saleswomen at the dealership. In 2018, while her career was on the rise, Serafina met Jet through social media. This opened a new chapter in her life. After meeting on social media in early 2018, Jet and Serafina were quickly attracted to each other due to their compatible personalities and shared big ambitions. Both are ambitious and not afraid to face challenges. The initial conversations gradually developed into dates where they explored life together and shared their dreams for the future. Jet and Serafina's relationship progressed rapidly. After just a few months, they realized that they were perfect for each other. Jet was attracted to Serafina's intelligence, dynamism, and optimism, while Serafina admired Jet's success and determination in both his career and life. In late May 2018, during a romantic stroll on the beach, Jet suddenly got down on one knee and proposed to Serafina. In the brilliant sunset light, he presented her with an engagement ring, symbolizing the promise of a happy future together. Serafina was moved by Jet's sincerity and immediately agreed. Just a month later, In June 2018, they held a cozy wedding attended by their family and close friends. Their wedding marked the beginning of a new life where they shared joys, challenges, and built a happy family together. After getting married, Jet and Serafina lived a fairly normal life. They were middle class and maintained a comfortable but not too lavish lifestyle. Jet continued to develop his career in the cryptocurrency industry, while Serafina continued to work in the car sales industry. The two built a family together and happily welcomed 2 children, a boy and a girl, shortly after their marriage. However, in 2021, when Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market exploded, the value of Jet's investment skyrocketed. Thanks to his investment acumen from previous years, Jet quickly became a millionaire. This unexpected wealth changed the life of the whole family. They bought a luxurious villa in Wilmington, Delaware, where they lived with their 2 young children. At this time, Jet was 34 years old and Serafina was 28 years old, in their prime in both health and physiology. However, although life seemed perfect with wealth, a large house, and a complete family, fluctuations in work and finances gradually created distances in the couple's relationship. Because of their busy work and childcare, Jet and Serafina decided to hire a maid to help their family. Freya, a beautiful and youthful 24-year-old girl, born and raised in a poor rural area in Georgetown, was hired by their family as a maid. Freya came to Jet and Serafina's family through the introduction of a friend of Serafina. With her lovely appearance and gentle personality, she quickly gained trust and closeness in the family, especially in taking care of the house and children. Starting in 2022, Jet and Serafina's busy work schedules left them with less and less time to spend together. Long business trips, long meetings, and work pressure created distance in their relationship. During this time, Jet began to pay more attention to Freya, the young and innocent maid who was often at home to take care of the children and do the housework. Jet, sensing the growing distance between him and his wife, was seduced by Freya's youthful beauty and innocence. He began to approach her furtively, initially with sweet words and intimate gestures. Gradually, Jet went further, wooing Freya with promises of a bright future. He told her that he would marry her as his concubine and buy her a house of her own. The promises of a successful and wealthy man made Freya, born and raised in poverty, easily attracted and believed in the future Jet painted. One morning like any other, when Serafina left home for work, Jet decided to make his bold move. With his wife now absent, Jet approached Freya, no longer hiding his lustful gaze. In a tense moment, he suddenly pulled Freya into her room. Not giving her time to react, the door quickly closed, separating them from the outside world. Freya, in her innocence, was still confused and afraid but could not refuse the power of this powerful man. Jet, clearly sensing her confusion, became even more aroused. When he realized that Freya was still a virgin, this only increased his desire. In a frenzy, Jet carried her to the bed, pressed her down, and quickly achieved his goal. Everything happened in a suffocating silence, only the hasty movements and rapid breathing of both of them. After satisfying his purpose, Jet did not forget to demonstrate his power by taking out some money and giving it to Freya as a reminder of their status. Freya, with her innocence and immaturity, could only silently take the money, although the feeling of shame and humiliation was rising in her heart. From then on, this clandestine and sinful relationship began. Jet and Freya's subsequent illicit encounters took place repeatedly in the luxurious mansion, disregarding all bounds of morality and loyalty. They often chose times when Serafina was away to continue their secret relationship. The initial clandestine encounters took place mainly in Freya's room, where the young maid often retired after work. But Jet's daring did not stop there. As his passion and sense of power took over, Jet gradually extended his illicit rendezvous to the couple's bedroom. What had once been Serafina and Jet's sacred private space now became the place where he and Freya continued their treachery, right under the roof that Serafina had always thought was the family's safe haven. Each time, Freya became more and more dependent and conflicted, while Jet fell deeper and deeper into the betrayal and deception he had created. Although Jet and Freya's secret meetings were frequent in the mansion, Serafina seemed unaware of the betrayal that was silently destroying her family. Her busy life with work and taking care of her children made her unaware of the unusual signs around her. Jet, with his ability and ingenuity, had subtly concealed all his actions perfectly, leaving no trace or clue that would make Serafina suspicious. Under the facade of a happy family, Serafina continued to live without realizing that what was happening behind her back was gradually pushing their lives into an inevitable tragedy. By April 2022, Freya discovered that she was pregnant. With joy and hope mixed together, she immediately informed Jet, believing that this was the time he would fulfill the promises he had made all this time. Freya thought that, with a child forming in her belly, Jet would keep his word, marry her as a concubine and buy her a house of his own as promised. However, when Jet heard this news, instead of being happy or fulfilling his promise, he began to show a clear change in his attitude. Jet's stern expression and cold eyes made Freya feel uneasy. He told her that everything between them was just a temporary feeling, a mistake on both sides, and that he had no intention of continuing this relationship. Freya was shocked and bewildered to hear those words from the person she had placed so much trust in. But the pain did not stop there. Jet took out a large sum of money and coldly handed it to her, asking her to have an abortion. He said that this was the only way for both of them to continue their lives without being entangled or suffering the consequences of past mistakes. Freya, who had dreamed of a good future with Jet, now could only stare at the money in her hand with despair and a feeling of betrayal. In that moment, her dreams and hopes completely collapsed, and in their place was a rising rage. In despair and deep betrayal, Freya could no longer accept that she had been deceived and abandoned by Jet. The promises she had made now felt empty, and her feelings of abandonment turned to hatred. A daring and dangerous plan for revenge began to form in Freya's mind. She decided to make Jet experience the same pain of loss that she was feeling. One afternoon, when Jet and Serafina were both away from home, Freya put her plan into action. She quietly kidnapped Jet and Serafina's eldest daughter, the little girl the family loved and protected so much. Freya knew that this would be the way to hit Jet's weak spot, to make him feel the same pain he had caused her. After kidnapping the girl, Freya sent a haunting text message to Serafina in which she revealed the whole truth about her affair with Jet. The words in the message expressed not only anger but also pain and betrayal. Freya told her that Jet had lied to her, promised her good things, but in the end asked her to abort and abandon the child they had created together. In the message, Freya emphasized that Jet had asked her to get rid of her child, and now she would take revenge by doing the same, getting rid of the child that Jet and Serafina loved the most. She wanted Jet to feel the pain of losing a child, the way she was hurt when she was forced to give up the child in her womb. When she received the message from Freya, Serafina was completely shocked and scared. The words in the message were like a strong shock, not only exposing Jet's illicit relationship, but also directly threatening the life of their daughter. Her heart was pounding. Everything around her seemed to collapse. She could not believe that the maid, whom they once trusted, could commit such a cruel act. There was no time to argue or blame Jet for what had happened, so the couple quickly called the police. While waiting for help, they decided to contact Freya directly, hoping to salvage the situation. The negotiation call was extremely tense. Jet and Serafina tried to calm Freya's anger, sincerely apologized, and accepted all her demands with only one condition: she would not harm their daughter. Throughout the conversation, Serafina choked on every word, begging Freya to think of the innocent child. Jet, although trying to stay calm, his voice was filled with worry, regret, and begging for Freya's forgiveness. They were willing to meet any condition Freya put forward, as long as she gave up her cruel intentions and returned their daughter to them safely. The call dragged on in a tense atmosphere as the police began to investigate Freya's location based on the conversation. But whether the couple's apologies and pleas could save their daughter's life was something they still couldn't know. The police quickly used professional measures to locate Freya through the conversation. All of Jet and Serafina's hopes were placed on the police arriving in time to save their daughter. Freya's location was determined to be an abandoned house located in a remote suburb of the city. However, when the police arrived, the couple's fragile hopes were completely shattered. Inside the cold, abandoned house, the police discovered the body of the little girl that Jet and Serafina loved. She had been murdered by Freya before they could arrive. The pain and loss that could not be described came to Jet and Serafina when they heard that their daughter was gone. The pleas and promises made during the previous negotiations were all in vain. Serafina collapsed in grief while Jet, who had tried to stay calm, now completely collapsed. Both were pushed into a spiral of despair as the irreparable loss became a cruel reality. After committing the terrible crime, Freya quickly fled the scene before the police arrived. She left behind the abandoned house and her daughter's body, trying to escape capture. The police immediately launched a large-scale chase, using every means to find Freya's whereabouts. After about 7 hours of tension, Freya's traces were finally discovered. Thanks to small clues in the area near the abandoned house, the police were able to track down the direction she had fled. The chase ended when Freya was arrested in a remote area not far from the scene. When she was arrested, Freya did not resist but remained silent, seemingly accepting her fate after what she had done. At the police station, Freya recounted the whole story of her relationship with Jet, not hesitating to expose everything that had happened during that time. From Jet's advances towards her with sweet promises, to the moment he asked her to have an abortion, every detail was recounted clearly and emotionally. Freya fell into a state of deep trauma. She was both angry and hurt by what she had gone through, and now the loss and pain completely overwhelmed her. When Jet was brought to the police station to confront Freya, she suddenly burst into laughter, a cold and bitter laugh. Freya looked straight at Jet, as if wanting him to feel the pain of losing a child, the feeling she had suffered when she was forced to give up her child. Her smile was an expression of successful revenge, a bitter ending for both of them. The police officially detained Freya after completing the interrogation process, preparing for further legal proceedings. After being imprisoned, Freya gave birth to a child in December 2022. This child was the result of her relationship with Jet. Despite the tragic consequences, Jet decided to adopt the child. However, instead of raising the child himself, Jet asked another family to care for the child as part of an effort to make up for the mistakes he had made. Adopting the child was a form of atonement, but the pain and trauma of betrayal and loss could not be completely healed for all involved. In February 2023, Freya's trial took place in Wilmington, Delaware. The trial attracted a lot of public attention because of the shocking and tragic details of the case involving a wealthy family and a young maid. The court was packed with people in attendance, including the families of Jet and Serafina, who were still suffering from terrible pain after the death of their daughter. At the trial, the prosecutor detailed the secret relationship between Jet and Freya, the betrayal, the empty promises that Jet made, and how Freya was pushed into a path of despair. Evidence of the kidnapping and murder of Jet and Serafina's daughter was also presented in court, along with testimony from witnesses and investigators. Freya stood in court, calm and seemingly emotionless. She admitted to everything from the kidnapping to the murder of the child, explaining that her actions were motivated by grief and despair over Jet's deception. However, no explanation could lessen the horror of the crimes she had committed. After reviewing all the evidence and testimony, the jury found Freya guilty of murder and kidnapping. Although the defense attorneys attempted to argue that Freya acted in a state of mental distress, that was not enough to mitigate the sentence. The Wilmington Municipal Court sentenced Freya to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the unforgivable crimes she had committed. As the verdict was read, the courtroom fell silent. Serafina and Jet sat there, hurt and exhausted, but knowing that at least some justice had been served. Freya was taken away, and her life ended in eternal imprisonment, taking with her the memories and tragedies she had created. Story 5. In this story, we will explore a horrific case that happened in the city of London, where a seemingly perfect love hides deadly dark secrets. On July 30th, 2016, Mila Broden, a 30-year-old woman, was thrown from the 19th floor of a luxury apartment right next to Hyde Park. The victim was Mila, a woman with a difficult love life, and the perpetrator was none other than her boyfriend, Sebastian Grimes, a man with a dark past and an extremely controlling personality. What led to Mila's heartbreaking death? Was it an accident or the deliberate act of a control freak? Imagine in a romantic space with sparkling lights you suddenly get down on your knees and propose to your lover. The feeling of happiness is overwhelming, making you feel like the luckiest person in the world, right? The main character in today's story, Mila Broden, also experienced such a moment. On June 12, 2016, at a fancy restaurant in London, Mila was celebrating her 30th birthday with her boyfriend. In the warm and sweet atmosphere, Sebastian Grimes, her boyfriend, suddenly knelt down and proposed to Mila with an engagement ring. Mila accepted the proposal in complete happiness as the ring sparkled on her hand. However, she could not have imagined that those sweet moments would quickly disappear and a terrible tragedy would strike soon after. The case took place in Hyde Park, a famous symbol of London, which is no less famous than other structures such as Big Ben or Tower Bridge. This park is over 40 hectares wide, surrounded by rows of ancient trees and green lawns, creating a peaceful atmosphere with birdsong and fragrant flowers. Mila Broden, born on June 12, 1986, in Toronto, Canada, is the main character of the story. She has an older brother named Jared, and they were raised by their mother, Catherine, alone since they were young. Mila has always loved sports, often playing soccer and practicing karate with her brother. However, her greatest passion is dancing. Mila has been dancing since elementary school, learning salsa and jazz. By the age of 10, she had participated in many dance competitions and won many awards. However, at school, Mila was not as outstanding. She was constantly bullied, which led to Mila having a negative view of her appearance. Under so much pressure, Mila fell into a state of depression and an eating disorder, which was so severe that she had to be hospitalized for 3 months. After graduating from high school, Mila worked at a retail store in Toronto, promoting and selling perfumes. But that job didn't last long. By the end of 2004, she decided to quit her job and planned to move to England. Mila arrived in London on July 1, 2005, and after 4 months, she found a job at a large cosmetics company. Due to the absence of a father figure since childhood, Mila has often been attracted to older men. She started a relationship with a colleague who was 20 years older than her, but the age difference made the relationship go nowhere. By the end of 2009, Mila's visa in the UK was about to expire, but she loved living there so much that she decided to study and work at a hairdressing school to solve her visa problem. During this time, she had a new relationship with another coworker who was 10 years older than her. However, he was married, and when Mila discovered this truth, she had to end the relationship in pain. At the same time, Mila also had to find a new place to live. Her ex-boyfriend introduced her to a friend named Sebastian Grimes, who had an apartment for her to stay in until she found suitable accommodation. After their first meeting, Mila was impressed with Sebastian, a successful man working in the field of importing high-end leather shoes from the US to the UK. With his elegant and generous dressing style, Sebastian easily won the sympathy of those around him. He lives in a 2-bedroom luxury apartment on the 19th floor, right next to Hyde Park, with amenities such as a gym and private swimming pool. From the living room of her 19th floor apartment, Mila Broden can look straight out onto the vast London skyline, with its famous restaurants and cafes just below. Just imagine how wonderful life would be here. Mila and Sebastian Grimes quickly became a couple after 2 months of knowing each other. At first, everyone saw them as extremely affectionate, like a couple passionately in love. In that 19th floor apartment, Mila Broden and Sebastian Grimes had passionate, intimate nights after they first fell in love. It was a time when they were immersed in passionate moments that seemed like they would never end. Everything seemed perfect in their relationship. The luxurious room with panoramic views of London was the place to capture the emotional moments that seemed to last forever. However, behind that sweetness, there is a dark curtain of control and obsession with power. Sebastian gradually reveals his true nature as a control freak, not only wanting to possess Mila's feelings, but also manipulating every aspect of her life. The passionate moments are gradually replaced by tension and conflict. When Mila realizes she is trapped in a dangerous relationship, Soon Mila began to realize that Sebastian was controlling her too much. He kept track of every detail of her life, from who she met, where she ate, where she went, what she did, all of which she had to report back to him. Ever since they opened a joint bank account, Mila gradually lost her financial independence. To make matters worse, Sebastian isolated Mila from her close friends. He hacked into her social media accounts, checked every email and text message, and deleted all of her male friends. He even banned her from going out alone, saying she was too beautiful and attracted too much attention from other men. Sebastian controlled everything from what Mila wore, what she ate, to where she could go. Mila can't go down to the gym alone, even though it's right downstairs, because Sebastian can't stand the sight of other men staring at her. He hires a female trainer to come to Mila's house to teach her how to work out, so she doesn't have to go out. Although Mila constantly argued and resisted, Sebastian was very skillful. He never hit her, but always used psychological manipulation to make her feel that she was wrong and had to obediently return. Every time they argued, Sebastian would gently comfort her, making Mila gradually believe that he was being too harsh. He both controlled and isolated Mila, but also took good care of her, creating a conflict that prevented her from decisively breaking up. Sebastian Grimes, born in 1973 in Maryland, England, is the only son of 5 children. His parents were refugees from Lebanon. Just after turning 18 in October 1991, Sebastian was arrested for the first time after harassing his ex-girlfriend at a store. After being chased away by the store owner, he called in 12 thugs to come back and beat the store owner, causing serious injuries. Sebastian ended up in jail. In 1993, he was arrested again for shoplifting at a club. By May 1994, Sebastian had become even more aggressive, refusing to appear in court when summoned and fighting with 2 detectives when they came to arrest him. One of them suffered broken bones, and Sebastian bit off part of the ear of the other. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but claimed to have repented and wanted to convert to Christianity to demonstrate his reformation. With the help of a pastor, Sebastian was allowed to go to a monastery in France instead of serving time in prison. However, after a year of practicing asceticism, Sebastian left everything behind and returned to London. From a spiritual ascetic, he quickly became a drug dealer. In 2001, he was arrested with 66 ecstasy pills and PS5, 500 in cash. Mila was completely unaware of Sebastian's criminal past. By 2016, after they had been dating for a year, Sebastian became more and more controlling of Mila. On her 30th birthday, he threw a party and publicly proposed to Mila. Furious at romantic proposal, Mila Broden and Sebastian Grimes spent another passionate night in their 19th floor apartment. Sebastian was not only a gentleman, but also very good in bed. According to Mila's later diary entries, Sebastian could sleep with her up to 3 times in one night. Mila once noted that Sebastian's passion during their nights of lovemaking made her feel more loved and attracted than ever. However, hidden behind those carnal passions, there is a sense of possession and control that Mila gradually realizes in this relationship. Sebastian is not only good at making Mila indulge in long nights, but also begins to control her life in every little detail. The passionate moments of love gradually become a suffocating drama, where Mila is caught between passion and fear. Mila's life began to turn into a nightmare. She fell into a depression, unable to eat or sleep properly. Mila's personal trainer advised her to leave Sebastian and even introduced her to a psychologist named Michelle Richmond. During her first meeting with Michelle, Mila shared everything she was feeling, but asked Michelle not to take notes because she knew Sebastian would find a way to check her medical records. Mila feared that if Sebastian found out, he would go crazy and threaten her safety. Michelle also advised Mila to leave Sebastian. After receiving support from her coach and psychologist, Mila began to feel more secure and ready to escape this suffocating situation. However, leaving someone with a long criminal past like Sebastian Grimes is not an easy thing. Even though he knew the difficulties in advance, Mila Broden remained determined. She quietly prepared everything, packed her suitcase and important personal items, and hid them in a separate safe. At the same time, Mila also sent a text message to Michelle Richmond, her therapist, to let her know that she was ready to leave Sebastian. However, Mila underestimated the extent of Sebastian's control. She knew he had installed surveillance cameras inside and outside her apartment, but she did not expect that Sebastian was also monitoring her emails and personal accounts. He even secretly installed spyware on Mila's phone and computer. This allowed Sebastian to track her location 24/7 and check all her calls and messages. When Sebastian found out that Mila had sent a text message to Michelle, he immediately took action. That night, Michelle received a call from Mila's number, but as soon as she said hello, she was shocked to realize that the person on the other end of the line was not Mila but Sebastian. 2 days later, on the night of July 30th, 2016, Mila quietly called her mother, Catherine, and said she was ready, everything was prepared, and she would leave that very day. Catherine could sense the worry in her daughter's voice and quickly prepared to take time off work to fly to London to pick up Mila. Little did she know that this would be the last call between mother and daughter. More than 4 hours later, when it was already dawn, Catherine called Mila again but could not reach her. She called and texted repeatedly, but still received no response. Worried, she called and texted Sebastian, but he did not pick up or respond either. Later, while Catherine was waiting in panic, her phone rang, but it was not Mila but the London police. They informed her of the terrible news regarding her daughter. When he raised his head, he saw a person falling freely from above, and on the 15th floor balcony, a man was bending down looking down with a worried expression. That man was Sebastian Grimes, Mila's boyfriend. When police arrived at the scene, Mila had died from a fall from the height of the 15th floor. At the scene, they found a shoe and Mila's handbag. In her pocket, the police found a torn letter. After reassembling it, they realized it was Mila's handwritten letter, written before she decided to leave Sebastian. Security cameras inside and outside the apartment also recorded the entire incident. Sebastian, standing in the crowd, stepped out and recounted what had just happened. The apartment was Tartment 1906, where Mila and Sebastian live. It is a luxurious 2-bedroom apartment. Upon entering the door, one sees the living room and kitchen on the left, and from the living room, a small narrow balcony lies directly in front. The balcony railing is so tight and narrow that it is difficult to imagine someone falling straight down. Sebastian Grimes told the police that he was Mila Broden's fiancé. That morning, they had a heated argument. Mila wanted to leave the apartment, but Sebastian pulled her back. After returning to the apartment, Mila sat down on the sofa and seemed to calm down. Sebastian said he was going to make her a cup of tea, but suddenly Mila ran to the balcony and jumped before he could react. Sebastian's story sounds unbelievable, and it is true. After investigating his phone, computer, and checking security cameras in the apartment, the police discovered a completely different story. Even though it was Saturday, Sebastian woke up very early because he knew in advance that Mila intended to leave that day. As soon as he woke up, he opened the surveillance software on his computer to monitor Mila's movements. However, Sebastian could not log into the software because Mila had changed the password. He immediately confronted her about changing the password, and they got into another heated argument. Mila said that she had already bought her plane ticket and decided to leave because she couldn't stand his control anymore. With that, she grabbed her bag and ran out of the apartment. However, as soon as she reached the door, Mila was pulled back by Sebastian. Instead of using violence, he gently dragged her into the bedroom. They stayed there for about 30 minutes, and according to Sebastian, he tried to calm the argument by initiating an intimate relationship. He believed that passion could resolve any tension between them, but even after they did that, Mila didn't change her mind. She was still determined to leave him. Security cameras outside the apartment captured Mila's final moments. As she was dragged into the house, neighbors heard her desperate cries for help. They said they were unmistakable screams for help. After a thorough examination of security cameras, police discovered that just 69 seconds after Mila was dragged into the apartment, she fell from the 19th floor balcony. This is based on the screams heard by neighbors and passersby. Police believe that in such a short period of time, Mila could not have been as calm as Sebastian claimed. If Mila had really calmed down, why did she run to the balcony and decide to jump? Sebastian's account of the incident clearly doesn't make sense. Prosecutors then charged Sebastian with murder. After several months in custody, a judge granted him bail in January 2017. Upon his release, Sebastian gave media interviews in which he maintained his innocence, vowing to prove it at trial. However, the media quickly realized that every time Sebastian appeared in court, there was always a young woman accompanying him. The person was Rachel Lewis, 23 years old. Rachel and Sebastian had been best friends since before Mila met him. Although Sebastian had just been released early, Rachel officially became his new girlfriend in October 2017. Rachel was very happy to be dating Sebastian, and in her eyes he was perfect. Rachel Lewis also told her close friends that Sebastian Grimes was really good in bed. She often shared that he always knew how to make her happy and satisfied every time they were together. Every time she was with Sebastian, he brought her new feelings, making Rachel immersed in extreme happiness. For Rachel, being in love with someone like Sebastian was a blessing, and she felt completely satisfied both mentally and physically in her relationship with him. When Sebastian was previously charged with drug possession, Rachel claimed it was because his friends had planted drugs in his bag. When Sebastian attacked the police, she claimed it was because they didn't have the proper paperwork. Rachel also claimed that Sebastian could not have pushed Mila down, but that Mila jumped off the building herself. In short, in Rachel's eyes, all the accusations against Sebastian were someone else's fault, and he was always right. The formal trial began 2 years after the murder. In November 2018, the trial of Sebastian Grimes finally began. In court, a police forensic expert said she had collected Sebastian's fingerprints on the balcony railing as well as his left palm print on the glass of the railing. However, there were no fingerprints of Mila Broden on the entire balcony. If Mila really climbed up the railing and jumped down, then why were there no traces of her? In addition to fingerprint evidence and security camera footage, police also called a key witness, a television news anchor who happened to be passing through Hyde Park at the time of the incident. As Mila was dragged back to her apartment, she kept screaming for help. Even on the 19th floor, her screams echoed down below. The editor heard her screams and looked up to see a man on the balcony holding a girl. That man was Sebastian. Sebastian's defense attorney argued that if Mila had climbed the railing, she could have left her bag underneath, thus leaving no fingerprints on the railing. Regarding the witness testimony, the attorney argued that the witness could have misremembered, as Sebastian is only 1.69 m tall, while the balcony railing is 1.2 m high, would have been very difficult to lift Mila and throw her off. In addition, the lawyer said that when the editor saw the scene on the balcony, Mila did not resist, suggesting that she may have been unconscious or dead before. However, there were no signs of blunt force trauma or strangulation on Mila's body. If she had been unconscious, it would be highly unlikely that Sebastian could have knocked his girlfriend unconscious, then picked up her 50 gigabytes body and threw her off the balcony in just 69 seconds. The lawyer argued that the witness may have been mistaken, and that Mila had actually jumped off the balcony due to her mental instability. On the contrary, the prosecutor argued that Sebastian, despite his small stature, had the strength to throw two 1.8 m tall policemen before, so it was entirely possible that he would have grabbed Mila and thrown her from a height of 1.2 m. As for Mila's unconsciousness, there were many different possibilities, not necessarily due to being beaten or strangled. In a state of extreme emotional instability and mental stimulation, Mila could have fainted on her own. More importantly, the text messages between Mila and Sebastian, as well as the testimony of friends and family, along with the spyware Sebastian installed, all point to him as a control freak, prone to fits of rage. When Sebastian learned that Mila had packed her bags and bought a plane ticket, he knew he would no longer be able to control her. In a rage, he dragged her back to the apartment, ignoring her cries for help, and after Mila passed out, he threw her from the 19th floor. After days of debate, the judge finally made his decision. He believed the witness testimony completely and concluded that Sebastian lost control of his anger and threw Mila from the 15th floor, convicting him of murder. On February 11, 2019, the judge officially sentenced Sebastian Grimes to 26 years in prison. Sebastian is said to be a man of two faces. On one hand, he is very generous, willing to help his family and friends, but on the other hand, He is extremely extremist and violent. He used to be a Christian, but he does not adhere to the teachings and is always ready to use violence against anyone who gets in his way. In Mila's case, he showed extreme control, completely disregarding his girlfriend's wishes and even having no qualms about killing her. Throughout the trial, Sebastian showed no remorse, only arrogance and self-importance. He was ultimately sentenced to 26 years in prison. Sebastian's new girlfriend, Rachel Lewis, was devastated after hearing the verdict. However, she still believes her boyfriend is innocent. Sebastian appealed against the conviction in 2021, but it was rejected, and Rachel later broke up with him. Sebastian is currently being held in a prison in West London. After being imprisoned, Sebastian Grimes admitted that the reason for his brutal actions was that he loved Mila Brodin too much and was afraid of losing her to another man. In his late confession, Sebastian said that the fear of losing the woman he loved so deeply caused him to lose control. He admitted that love was not just attachment, but also became possessive and overly controlling, leading to a tragic outcome that neither of them deserved to endure. The case of Mila Brodin is a heartbreaking tragedy, when a passionate love turned into a horrible nightmare. From the moments of love and sublimation in love, Sebastian Grimes gradually revealed his controlling and cruel nature. Mila just wanted to escape that control to start a new life, but she did not have the chance to do so. Her death in the 19th floor apartment still haunts, and the truth behind Sebastian's actions is a sobering warning about toxic relationships where love is twisted into power and possession. Story 6. In a small, quiet California town in 1990, a tragic tale of betrayal and jealousy quietly weaves the fate of a seemingly perfect couple. Jonathan Pierce, a devoted and successful husband, suddenly faces a breakdown of trust when he discovers a secret hidden in his own home. Together with his beautiful wife Claire, their lives gradually drift apart until a small but significant event sends everything spiraling out of control. An unstoppable tragedy begins. Jonathan Pierce, 27, has achieved great success in the field of civil engineering. He is a hard worker, dedicated to his work, and is highly regarded by his colleagues and superiors. Every project Jonathan has participated in has yielded results that exceeded expectations, thanks to his meticulousness and dedication. His career, though still in its infancy, has been admired by many for its steady progress. However, his professional success does not entirely reflect his personal life. Outside of work, Jonathan Pierce is a quiet man. He does not like noise and often avoids parties or social activities that many people his age often participate in. Instead, Jonathan spends most of his free time reading or doing small crafts around the house. He has a special connection with his family, always caring deeply for his parents and siblings. For him, his family is the safest and most peaceful place, where he always feels comfortable and can be himself. Although Jonathan is successful and has a stable life, he is quite lonely when it comes to love. For many years, he had not had a serious love relationship. He spent most of his time focusing on work, seemingly forgetting the joy of loving or sharing his life with others. Close friends often advised him to open up more, but Jonathan, with his quiet nature, found it difficult to start a relationship. He was not someone who easily expressed his emotions, and this made him feel insecure about the idea of falling in love. Many of Jonathan's contemporaries were married or at least in committed relationships, but he did not care much about that. For Jonathan, finding love was not a top priority. Instead, he focused on building his career and creating a solid future. But in his quiet moments alone, Jonathan sometimes wondered if he was missing out on something important. In the evenings when he came home from a tiring day at work, the silence in his apartment sometimes felt heavy and empty, making him feel a little lonely. The company party that day was an important event, not only for engineers and architects, but also for partners from many different fields. Jonathan Pierce, as usual, was not a person who liked noise or excitement. He attended only for work reasons and had no special expectations. Despite his success in his career, Jonathan has always maintained a calm and quiet appearance, making him somewhat different from the crowd. But that very day, amidst the glittering lights and loud laughter of the party, Jonathan's life took a completely new turn when he happened to meet Claire Pierce. Claire, 35, caught Jonathan's attention at first sight. She stood out from the crowd, not only because of her classy fashion sense, but also because of the charm and confidence of a successful woman. Claire worked in the fashion industry, a glamorous, vibrant world, far from what Jonathan was used to. But there was an invisible connection between them from the very first moment, a feeling that was both strange and familiar. Claire, in Jonathan's eyes, was not only a beautiful woman, but also exuded intelligence, determination, and ingenuity that he had never seen in anyone else. To Claire, Jonathan was a completely different man from the men she had met at parties or social events. His calm and mature demeanor created a special attraction that Claire could not resist. She had lived in a world full of pretense, where everything revolved around appearances and social success. But Jonathan was different. He did not get caught up in that flashiness. Instead, he brought a sense of peace and sincerity. That was what attracted Claire quickly. Their conversation didn't last long, but it was enough for both of them to feel something special. After the party, they started dating. Jonathan and Claire's meetings became more frequent. At first, just simple coffee dates or walks through the streets. Despite coming from completely different worlds, they found a common thread in their souls. Jonathan, though quiet and somewhat reserved when it comes to love, felt comfortable sharing his deepest secrets with Claire. Claire, on the other hand, was a strong and independent woman. But when she was with Jonathan, she felt like she could let go of her perfect exterior and become vulnerable and honest. After only a short time of dating, Jonathan and Claire decided to get married. In 1987, they had a small but intimate wedding, attended only by their family and a few close friends. For many, this marriage was the perfect union of two successful and influential people in society. Jonathan, with his solid construction career, and Claire, with her position in the fashion industry, created a model of an ideal couple. In the early years of their marriage, Jonathan and Claire's life was truly fulfilling. Both were successful in their careers, together building a perfect home financially and socially. They live in a large house in a quiet suburb, regularly attending high-class events and parties. Claire continues her fashion career, constantly expanding her network of relationships and increasingly asserting her position in the industry. Jonathan, despite his busy work, is always a devoted husband, always ready to share and listen to his wife. While at the social gatherings they attended, Claire and Jonathan always appeared to be the perfect couple. Claire, with her gorgeous appearance and confident demeanor, and Jonathan, her calm and mature husband, made a strong impression on those around them. Their life at that time was truly blameless. Claire was always the ideal woman in everyone's eyes, a perfect wife, an independent and successful woman. However, life is never quite as it seems. Behind that perfection, Claire keeps many secrets that she has never shared with Jonathan. In private moments, Claire sometimes feels the pressure from the image she has built. As a strong and successful woman, Claire always tries to maintain perfection in front of everyone, but that also means she has to hide her weak and sensitive parts. Jonathan, with his calm and quiet nature, although he loves Claire very much, he does not realize the complicated emotions she is going through. For him, this marriage is a perfect combination of two people who love and respect each other. He believes that they are living a fulfilling life, not knowing that Claire is feeling tired and needs something different. Although Claire and Jonathan had a strong emotional connection, after a few years of marriage, cracks began to appear. Claire, who had always appeared confident and independent, began to feel lonely in her marriage. Intimate conversations between the couple became less frequent, replaced by wordless silences. Jonathan still loves Claire, but he doesn't know how to break the distance that is forming between them. He feels helpless about what is happening, and instead of facing the problem, Jonathan often chooses to throw himself into work to avoid thinking too much. Claire, on the other hand, begins to feel trapped in a relationship that she can't escape. Although she loves Jonathan, the growing distance between them leaves her feeling empty and exhausted. The secrets and emotions she keeps inside begin to feel like an unbearable burden. Claire feels like she is no longer herself when she is with Jonathan, and this forces her to confront questions about the true meaning of happiness. Claire began to feel empty and sought comfort from others. Her relationship with Jonathan had long since changed. Jonathan had become distant, spending too much time at work and paying little attention to Claire. Whenever he came home, silence fell between them, and their conversations became short and superficial. Claire craves attention, but Jonathan no longer seems to have enough time or attention for her. In her loneliness, Claire meets a younger man. His presence makes Claire feel alive again. He brings her new emotions, makes her feel wanted, appreciated things she no longer gets from Jonathan. She knew that even the smallest mistake could threaten the life she and Jonathan had built. But nothing was perfect forever. One evening, when Jonathan came home from a long day at work, he felt something was different. The house was as quiet as usual, but there was a small, vague thing that he couldn't immediately recognize. Jonathan walked into the bedroom, where Claire was lying on the bed, seemingly asleep. He was about to undress quietly so as not to disturb her, but then his eyes fell on a strange object lying on the pillow next to Claire. It was a hairpin. The hairpin was small, delicate, and studded with sparkling stones, but not too elaborate. Jonathan picked it up, the cold metal in his hand making him clear his mind. This brooch clearly didn't belong to Claire. He knew his wife's taste. Claire never wore accessories like this. She kept them simple, understated, never too flashy. But there was something different about this brooch, something that felt foreign. A series of thoughts raced through Jonathan's mind at that moment. He tried to think of a plausible explanation. Maybe Claire had bought the brooch recently and he hadn't noticed, or maybe it was a gift from a friend. But neither seemed plausible. A brooch like this, with its distinctive design and detailing, wasn't something Claire usually owned, and Jonathan was certain he'd never seen one before. Jonathan sat down on the edge of the bed, his eyes fixed on the brooch. He felt a nagging unease creep into his mind, a feeling he couldn't ignore. His mind began to spin with questions. Who had given Claire this brooch? Why was it lying on their bed? Those thoughts slowly formed an undeniable image. This brooch had come from someone other than him. Lately, Jonathan had noticed a change in Claire. She was going out more, going on dates that she would simply say were to meet friends. She had become mysterious, avoided deep conversations, and something seemed to be keeping her at a distance. Jonathan tried not to think too much about it, thinking maybe she just needed some alone time. But now, with the hairpin in his hand, the pieces began to come together in his mind. The hairpin was more than just an accessory. It was a symbol of Jonathan's growing suspicions. He began to remember the times Claire came home late, the brief explanations, the phone calls she'd ended quickly when he was around. It was clear to him that Claire was hiding something from him, and the brooch was the proof. Jonathan did not confront Claire right away. Instead, he sat quietly in the dark, feeling the suspicion rising in his heart. He knew the truth would be painful, but he could not turn away from what was slowly unfolding before his eyes. He needed time to think, to understand more clearly what was really happening. One fateful day, Jonathan decided to act on his lingering suspicions. The hairpin had become a symbol of betrayal in his heart, and the thoughts kept coming back to haunt him. He could no longer just stand by and pretend nothing was happening. The question who was Claire seeing haunted him. To find out the truth, Jonathan began to secretly follow Claire. He never told Claire about his suspicions, maintaining a normal appearance, not changing in words or actions. But inside, Jonathan became different. He secretly watched Claire's actions, appointments, and small changes in her habits. Little did she know that Jonathan was watching her every move. He knew when she left the house, where she went, and when she returned. Over the course of several weeks, Jonathan gradually learned of a strange schedule that Claire followed. She would often make excuses about meeting friends or being busy with work, but there were always gaps in her time that she could never explain. At first, Jonathan thought she just wanted some alone time, but the more he watched, the more he was sure that something was wrong. Claire would leave home in the afternoons, sometimes in the evenings, but she didn't always return at the time she said she would. Then one day, Jonathan saw Claire enter a small cafe on the outskirts of town. It was not a place she had mentioned. He stood at a distance, hidden in the car, his eyes following her every move. Claire sat down, and a few minutes later, a young man entered, sitting across from her. The smile on her lips, the way she looked at him, were all different from the indifference she had shown Jonathan lately. In that moment, everything fell apart. The cruel truth was clear. Jonathan watched Claire and the stranger laugh and talk naturally, as if there was no one else in the world. He felt the blood rush to his head, his heart pounding in his chest. The betrayal had become obvious. Claire was no longer a loyal wife, but a traitor in his eyes. Jonathan didn't go over to them or confront them right away. He knew he needed to calm down, needed more time to collect his thoughts and figure out how to deal with them. He drove home, but the anger and resentment continued to scream in his mind. Every time he thought of Claire with another man, Jonathan felt like he was being stabbed in the heart. Over the next few days, Claire continued her secret rendezvous, unaware that Jonathan had discovered her. One evening, after Jonathan was certain that she had just returned from a meeting with her lover, he could no longer contain himself. The storm had been brewing for too long, and the hairpin, a symbol of betrayal, was now afire. Jonathan sat in the living room, waiting for Claire to enter the house. The house was dark and quiet, except for the dim light from the hallway. When Claire stepped through the door, Jonathan saw her through the dim light. Her face still had a trace of happiness from her meeting with her lover. This made Jonathan even angrier. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved and trusted could betray him so brazenly. Claire didn't notice Jonathan sitting there until he spoke, his voice cold and hard. "Claire, we need to talk," she startled, turning to look at Jonathan. His eyes were cold, no trace of the love she once knew. A flash of fear crossed Claire's mind, but she tried to keep her composure. She stepped closer to Jonathan, about to speak, but he cut her off. "That hairpin, it's not yours," his silence fell over the room. Claire froze, her heart pounding. She realized that the moment of confrontation had come. She knew there was no denying it. Jonathan knew, and she couldn't hide the truth any longer. After a long silence, Claire lowered her head, her eyes on the floor, and then she confessed, "Yes, I had a relationship with someone else." The confession rang out in the quiet space, like the sound of a hammer hitting an anvil. Jonathan couldn't believe his ears, even though he knew the truth. Hearing these words from Claire's own mouth, all the emotions in his heart became chaotic. Anger exploded uncontrollably. Without another word, Jonathan stood up. His eyes were filled with anger and pain. He walked towards Claire, his hands clutching the hairpin he had been holding since her confession. In a moment of uncontrollable rage and betrayal, Jonathan took the hairpin and stabbed it into Claire's chest. Claire's short scream echoed in the quiet room, then stopped. She fell to the floor, her face bloody and in pain. Jonathan looked down, his heart pounding, while Claire lay there, motionless, and everything seemed to be a nightmare from which Jonathan could never escape. After the crime, Jonathan fell into a state of extreme panic. Looking down at Claire's lifeless body on the floor, blood flowing from the wound where the hairpin had been embedded in her chest, he felt the world around him collapse. The silence in the house suddenly became eerie, and the reality of what had just happened began to weigh heavily on his mind. Jonathan couldn't believe he had done this. From the outburst of anger, he fell into a state of shock, not knowing how to handle the situation. In the chaos of emotions, Jonathan tried to think of a way to cover up his crime. He knew that to have a chance of escaping punishment, he had to clean up the scene and create a different story, one that the police would believe. The thought of facing punishment for murder terrified him, and his survival instincts forced him to act. Jonathan began to clean up the crime scene in a haphazard manner, trying to wipe away the blood with towels from the bathroom. He figured that if he could just erase all traces, the matter could go unnoticed. But the more he cleaned, the more he realized the futility of his action. The blood had soaked into the carpet, and bloodstains were left not only on the floor but also on his hands and the surrounding objects. Every step, every small smear of blood only added to the chaos. Sweat began to form on Jonathan's forehead. The tension in his heart increased, and panic took over. Seeing that he could not completely remove the blood, Jonathan decided to switch to another plan. He began to think of other ways to distract the investigation. He would call an ambulance and pretend he did not know what had happened, saying that Claire had been attacked or possibly had a fatal accident. Everything was spinning in his head, and he had no choice but to act quickly before things got any worse. Jonathan grabbed his phone and called 911. While he waited, he tried to reconstruct the scene in a crude way, moving a few objects around to create the appearance of chaos as if someone had attacked Claire. He even considered staging a robbery, but realized that would be too complicated. Time was running out, and he could only hope that his story would be convincing. As the police and paramedics arrived, Jonathan tried to stay calm, but guilt and fear overcame him. Although he had prepared his story in his head, his words became slurred and inconsistent. The police quickly noticed something was wrong. At first glance, it seemed simple enough: a wife had been stabbed to death in her own home. But as they began to examine the scene closely, things became clear. First, there was the evidence of a struggle. Despite Jonathan's efforts to wipe it away, the bloodstains left behind signs of a struggle. The officers noticed that the blood trail extended from where Claire had fallen, as if someone had tried unsuccessfully to wipe it away. Second, there was the hint of panic in Jonathan's testimony. He gave inconsistent answers when asked about the details of the incident, from how he found Claire to why he did not call an ambulance immediately. His explanations were unconvincing, and his face showed signs of anxiety and fear. The initial investigation focused on finding out what led to Claire's death. The police found no signs of forced entry. The front door and windows were intact, with no signs of forced entry or robbery. This quickly eliminated the possibility of an outsider, and their attention turned to Jonathan. In addition, upon closer inspection, the police discovered the hairpin, the one Jonathan used to stab Claire. This was an important detail. The hairpin was small, but it was right on Claire's body, and it was clearly the murder weapon. The police quickly took fingerprints from the brooch, and Jonathan's fingerprints were all over it. This not only confirmed that Jonathan was present at the scene, but also that he was directly responsible for Claire's death. When he was taken to the police station for questioning, Jonathan could not hide his panic. His story, already flimsy, began to fall apart under the pressure of questioning. He could not rationally explain why Claire had been stabbed with a hairpin, or why his fingerprints were all over the crime scene. Each question from the police pushed Jonathan deeper into a dead end. His psychological symptoms, his nervousness, sweating, and trembling only reinforced the police's suspicion that he was the killer. Ultimately, when all the evidence was gathered and Jonathan's story could not stand up to the sharp analysis of the investigators, he was charged with murder. The police had no doubt, and every detail of the case pointed to Jonathan being the only one with the motive, opportunity, and means to cause Claire's death. Jonathan was arrested, and his life fell into a bottomless pit. His attempts to cover up his crime were not only unsuccessful, but also quickly sent him into a legal spiral. Regret, pain, and punishment awaited him, and now there was no way to save him. At his trial in late 1990, Jonathan was charged with first-degree murder. His defense attorney attempted to argue that Jonathan's actions were motivated by deep psychological trauma from a betrayal, but this argument was not convincing in the face of overwhelming evidence of the violent nature of the crime. The hairpin, fingerprints, and blood at the scene all pointed irrefutably to Jonathan's guilt. Although Jonathan's feelings were addressed in his defense, the court could not ignore the gravity of the crime. Ultimately, Jonathan Pierce was sentenced to life in prison without parole, bringing to a tragic end a tale of betrayal, loss, and the consequences of uncontrolled anger. As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.